A skilled general doesn't open a battle by firing the first shot. He studies the terrain, watches the enemy, and waits for the exact moment to strike. In the game of communication, silence is that waiting, and those who shoot too soon have already lost before the first clash. We live in an age where the loudest voices seem to dominate. Endless meetings where everyone feels the need to speak. Social feeds overflowing with personal updates, leaders rushing to explain every move. But what if the real advantage belongs to the ones who don't rush to speak? What if power isn't just in the words you say, but in the words you choose to withhold? This is the art of strategic silence, an idea understood centuries ago by Niccolò Machiavelli, and almost forgotten in our age of compulsive communication. Today, we're going to explore how silence can protect your position, increase your authority, and let you win. While everyone else is still talking about winning, a skilled general doesn't open a battle by firing the first shot. He studies the terrain, watches the enemy, and waits for the exact moment to strike. In the game of communication, silence is that waiting, and those who shoot too soon have already lost before the first clash. We live in an age where the loudest voices seem to dominate. In business, people compete to speak the most in meetings, mistaking airtime for influence. On social media, the pressure to post every thought, every meal, every fleeting opinion is relentless. Leaders are told to be transparent at all times, as if constant explanation were the same as leadership. The assumption behind all this noise is simple. If you are not speaking, you are irrelevant. We have built a culture that equates visibility with value and volume with authority. Yet in the rush to be heard, something essential has been lost. The recognition that speech is not free. Every word you put into the world comes with a cost. It can bind you to a position, expose your thinking, and dilute your impact. What if real influence doesn't come from filling the air with words, but from mastering the moments when you say nothing? What if the strongest position is not the one that shouts the loudest, but the one that lets others reveal themselves first? Centuries before hashtags and live streams, one man understood this truth better than most. In the treacherous politics of Renaissance Florence, Niccolò Machiavelli observed that appearances could be shaped as much by what you left unsaid as by what you proclaimed. He knew that silence could be a shield, a weapon, and a strategy. In a world obsessed with constant communication, strategic silence is a rare and underestimated power. It protects your freedom to act, keeps your opponents guessing, allows you to win while others are still explaining why they deserve to win. This is the discipline we're about to explore: how to speak less, observe more, and use silence. Not as absence, but as influence. To understand the true weight of strategic silence, we have to step back 5 centuries into the narrow streets and candlelit chambers of Renaissance Florence. It was a city of brilliance and blood, where masterpieces were painted in the same decade that daggers were drawn in political intrigue. The Medici family ruled, lost power, then ruled again. Alliances shifted with the seasons, and words could be as dangerous as weapons. In this climate, a single careless remark could end not just a career, but a life. Niccolò Machiavelli, born in 1469, lived and breathed this environment. He served as a diplomat, observing kings, popes, generals, and envoys. His job was not just to deliver messages, but to read the silences between them, to see what was not being said. From these experiences, he distilled principles about power, human nature, survival that still provoke debate today. Machiavelli's name has become a shorthand for ruthless manipulation, yet much of his insight is subtler. One of his enduring lessons is that appearances govern perception, and perception governs power. The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, he wrote. Speech, he understood, creates appearances, but also locks you into them. Silence, by contrast, preserves your reality and your flexibility in the prince. He advised rulers to imitate both the fox and the lion. The lion is strong but can be trapped. The fox is cunning enough to avoid those traps. Part of that cunning is knowing when words strengthen your position and when they weaken it. In Machiavelli's Florence, A poorly timed disclosure could be political suicide. Announcing your intentions too early gave rivals the chance to counter them. Over-explaining your decisions suggested insecurity. Justifying every move diminished your mystique and authority. These lessons may have been forged in an era of plots and palace intrigue, but they translate seamlessly to our time. Today's battlefield is digital. The courtiers are executives, influencers, politicians, and everyday professionals. The stakes are different, but the dynamic is the same. Those who reveal too much too soon lose leverage. Those who master restraint keep the advantage. Machiavelli's world was one where a whisper could topple a ruler. Our world is one where a single tweet can undo a career. In both, the ability to hold your tongue until the right moment is not just a courtesy, it is a strategy for survival. If silence is a shield, then unnecessary speech is an open gate. Every time you speak without a clear strategic purpose, you invite others into your plans, your thinking, and your weaknesses. It feels harmless in the moment, but over time, it erodes your position. The first vulnerability is commitment. The instant you announce an intention, you bind yourself to it in the eyes of others. Circumstances change, and you adjust course. Your shift can be perceived as inconsistency, or worse, dishonesty. Silence keeps your options open. Words can lock you into a path you no longer wish to follow. A diplomat who publicly promises a negotiation outcome before talks even begin limits their ability to adapt when the terms change. A business leader who declares a product launch date before the team is ready traps themselves between delivering too early or breaking their word. The second vulnerability is exposure of thought. The more you explain your reasoning, the more you reveal about how you think, your assumptions, your blind spots, your priorities. This is intelligence that others can use to predict, manipulate, or counter you. In the boardroom, a rival who listens to your detailed reasoning can anticipate your moves. In politics, an opponent who understands your emotional triggers can bait you into self-sabotage. The third vulnerability is erosion of authority. Mystique is a form of power. When you explain every decision, justify every action, and weigh in on every issue, you reduce the gravity of your words. People begin to see you as ordinary, accessible, perhaps even desperate for approval. Machiavelli famously wrote, "It is far safer to be feared than loved." Fear requires distance, and distance requires mystery. If you erase that mystery, you also erase the perception of strength. We see these vulnerabilities play out everywhere. The executive who insists on contributing to every agenda item in a meeting slowly becomes background noise. The friend who overshares on social media becomes predictable instead of intriguing. The negotiator who fills an awkward pause with concessions hands away leverage without a fight. The leader who responds to every critic legitimizes the critic and diminishes their own stature. Modern culture tells us that constant communication equals authenticity. In reality, it often amounts to strategic malpractice, giving away information without securing anything in return. A careless sentence can be quoted, recorded, and shared far beyond its intended audience. Once spoken, it cannot be taken back. And in the digital era, it cannot be forgotten. Machiavelli understood that careless speech could lead to exile or execution. Our consequences may be less lethal, but they can still be career-ending, reputation-crushing, or opportunity-killing. The danger is quieter, but no less real. And that danger is exactly why restraint is not just politeness, it's protection. Not all silences are the same. Machiavelli's restraint was never about passivity, it was about purpose. Strategic silence is an active choice, shaped to the situation. When used well, it can collect intelligence, build authority, or preserve flexibility. Let's break it down into 3 distinct types. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally, Machiavelli wrote. The fool speaks immediately, revealing their position and learning nothing. The wise person listens first, letting others expose their own thinking. In negotiations, this is the principle behind the saying, whoever speaks first loses. When you ask a question and then stay silent, the other party will often rush to fill the void, sometimes with details they never intended to share. A skilled sales negotiator knows to state their proposal, then stop talking. The more the client talks, the more you learn about their real priorities and constraints in relationships. The person who listens more than they speak often understands the dynamics better than the constant talker. In competitive environments, those who keep their strategies private until execution outperform those who broadcast their plans in advance. Information gathering, silence creates an asymmetry of knowledge. Others reveal themselves. You remain a mystery. Power is not just about what you do, it's about how others perceive you. Machiavelli advised rulers to imitate both the fox and the lion. Right. Part of the fox's cunning is knowing when speaking diminishes authority instead of enhancing it. When you speak only on matters of significance, your words carry more weight. When you respond to criticism selectively, rather than to every provocation, you project confidence, not insecurity. In the corporate world, notice the difference between a junior executive and a seasoned CEO. The junior feels pressured away on every decision to prove value. The CEO makes brief, decisive statements and moves on, signaling that their time and words are too valuable to waste. This silence works because human beings naturally fill information gaps with their own assumptions. Often those assumptions are more flattering to you than the truth would be. If you leave space, people imagine you're thinking deeply, strategizing carefully, or holding back for good reason, even if you're simply exercising restraint. There are times when clarity is dangerous. When multiple interpretations serve your interest, silence preserves them. By refusing to pin yourself down, you allow different audiences to project their own expectations onto you. Politicians master this by making statements vague enough that each group hears what it wants to hear. Effective negotiators use it by avoiding firm positions that would prematurely narrow potential agreements. Leaders use it by articulating vision without revealing every step of the plan, leaving room to adapt as circumstances shift. Ambiguity preserving. Silence maintains your freedom of action. It also gives you deniability if challenged later. You never explicitly committed to a single interpretation. Machiavelli understood that politics have no relation to morals. In his world, flexibility could mean the difference between survival and downfall. In ours, it can mean the difference between a closed deal and a lost opportunity. Each of these silences is deliberate, not accidental. They are tools you select based on your objective, to learn without revealing, choose information gathering. Silence, to project strength, use authority-building silence, to keep options open. Maintain ambiguity-preserving silence. Mastering when and how to use them turns silence from absence into presence, from weakness into one of the most potent forms of power. Silence doesn't just work on the surface. Its real power lies in the way it shapes the thoughts, emotions, and behavior of others. When used with intent, it influences without argument, persuades without pressure, and commands without force. First, silence creates projection spaces. Human minds are uncomfortable with gaps in information. When we encounter those gaps, we instinctively fill them with our own assumptions, fears, or hopes. If you remain silent at key moments, people will project their own stories onto you, revealing far more about themselves than you reveal about yourself. Skilled interrogators use this tactic. Instead of bombarding a suspect with questions, they ask one, then sit in silence. The tension becomes unbearable, and the suspect starts talking to relieve it, often saying more than they intended. The same principle works in negotiations. If you can tolerate the pause, the other side will often talk themselves into concessions. Second, silence establishes dominance. In most conversations, the person who speaks first, most often, or at greatest length subtly signals that they are seeking approval or validation. The one who waits, who speaks less but with precision, signals that they are in the position of judgment, not supplication. This flips the power dynamic. Job candidate who listens carefully and asks sharp questions is often more impressive than one who talks endlessly about themselves. A leader who responds to criticism selectively, appears confident, while one who answers every challenge appears insecure. Third, silence creates mystique. As Machiavelli observed, men judge more by the eye than by the hand, what cannot be fully seen often feels more formidable than what is completely exposed. When you keep parts of your reasoning, plans, and motives private, others may overestimate your capability. Mystery amplifies perceived power. In leadership, this is why those who speak selectively often inspire greater respect than those who narrate their every move. It is not deception, it is discipline. By revealing less, you leave more room for others to imagine, and often to imagine in your favor. Modern culture has turned transparency into a sacred word. We are told to share our truth, to be authentic, to put it all out there. On the surface, this sounds like virtue, honesty, openness, vulnerability. But from a strategic perspective, absolute transparency is often a trap. When you reveal everything, you surrender the very resources that could protect or empower you. You give others the ability to predict your moves, exploit your weaknesses, and undermine your position. You bind yourself to past statements. Even when new information or changing circumstances demand a different course, Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present, he wrote. His point was not about dishonesty, but about flexibility. He recognized that survival and success require the freedom to adapt, without being shackled by previous declarations, yet the cult of transparency pushes us to do the opposite. In the workplace, it pressures us to share half-formed ideas before they are ready for scrutiny. In relationships, it encourages premature confessions or overly detailed disclosures about plans that may never materialize. On social media, it rewards those who turn every private moment into public content. The result: predictability, manipulability, ordinariness. Transparency is valuable when it serves a purpose, when it builds trust, strengthens alliances, or advances a goal. But as a constant state, it is strategic malpractice. The Machiavellian communicator practices selective disclosure, revealing only what strengthens their position, and withholding what could weaken it. They understand that in the economy of influence, what you keep to yourself can be more powerful than what you give away. Strategic silence is not about withdrawing from communication. It is about mastering timing, purpose, and restraint. Any skill, it can be developed through deliberate practice. First, practice information asymmetry. Before sharing your position on any significant matter, ensure you understand the other side's position first. Ask questions instead of making statements. Listen for what is implied but unsaid. In meetings, hold back your opinion until you've heard the full range of perspectives. You'll speak with more precision and impact. Second, cultivate strategic ambiguity. When clarity would prematurely limit your options, choose language that keeps them open. You are not lying. You're preserving flexibility. In leadership, share vision and objectives, but keep implementation details adaptable. Signal interest without locking into specifics until you've gathered all the leverage you can. Third, train your comfort with silence. Most people rush to fill conversational pauses out of discomfort. Use this to your advantage. Negotiations, after stating your position, say nothing. Let the other party react. In conflicts, hear the criticism fully before responding. Shows composure and denies your opponent the satisfaction of rattling you. Start small. In your next conversation, consciously pause before answering. Notice how often the other person will reveal more simply because you did not rush in. Strategic. Silence is less about what you withhold and more about the power you gain by withholding it. Over time, it becomes not just a tactic, but a natural part of how you operate. We began with a simple contrast: the culture of constant communication versus the rare discipline of strategic silence, a world where people believe that speaking more means influencing more. Silence feels counterintuitive, even suspicious. Yet as Machiavelli understood, it can be the most decisive move you make. Speech creates appearances. Silence preserves reality. Words can bind, expose, and dilute. Silence can free, protect, and concentrate. Those who speak without purpose chase attention. Those who master silence shape attention. They observe while others reveal themselves. They adapt without apology because they have not overcommitted in public. They command respect not by demanding it, but by letting mystery and discipline do the work. Machiavelli's own reputation is proof of his lesson. He is remembered as a manipulator, but much of his power came from understanding restraint, from knowing when to let others underestimate, or overestimate, or misread him. In our era, where every voice fights to be the loudest, strategic silence is a signal. It tells the world, I am not here to compete for noise. I am here to choose my moment. The difference between those who talk about winning and those who actually win is often measured in words unsaid. Let your actions speak when the time comes. Let your results make the noise, because in the end, the applause will be louder than anything you could have said along the way.